Wiping a bead of sweat from your forehead, which was a pretty amazing feat in itself when Snowden stayed in an icy 20 degrees Fahrenheit, you stopped in front of a familiar door. It was Saturday night, which meant you were about to spend another movie marathon with Sans and Papyrus. This became a tradition for you since the first weekend you spent in the underground. Still, somehow it made you incredibly nervous. Maybe it was the thought that you'd have to stomach another plate of sad, mutilated spaghetti. Maybe it was something else, though. The first few days you spent in the underground were as confusing as they were terrifying. You fell down, you woke up, and then BAM! Monsters everywhere. Magic, puzzles, talking flowers. Jerry! You spent about 2 days in total wondering if somehow you were dying from the fall and this was all some kind of slow-mo hallucination playing in your brain before you kicked the bucket. However, after a quick pep talk with yourself, you decided that you didn't really care, and that it'd be pretty neat to spend your last few hours with a bunch of fairy tale creatures who just want to hang out and bake you some pie. You missed Toriel, the monster behind the door. She was so kind to you. Why didn't she want you to leave? She refused to tell you, like it was painful just talking about it. She tried really hard to convince you to stay, though. Shaking your head to dispel that last thought, you finally squared your shoulders and knocked on the cold wooden door. There were a few loud bangs and crashes on the other side in response, followed by what sounded like Papyrus wailing in emotional agony. Spilled the sauce. Again. The Bone Brothers, a nickname you used for them quite often, were the ones who made the biggest impact on you from the get-go. Papyrus with his loud yet gentle personality and Sans's personality. They were stark contrasts to one another, and it was really endearing in a weird way. Plus, they really truly cared about each other. That was something rare to find on the surface. For you, at least. It both warmed your heart and made you green with envy. You could hardly say the same about your own family, or what little of it there was left. It was nice, feeling like you were part of their lives, however fleeting your presence may be. Sans especially caught your interest. It was kind of hard to ignore him. He always had that smile plastered on his face, but his eyes showed a surprisingly wide range of emotions. Not to mention that stare, those little pinpricks of light against the vast darkness of his skull. Sometimes out of the corner of your eye you could swear you saw them disappear, blown out like the flame of a candle. He also liked to suddenly pop up behind you when you knew for a fact that he wasn't there a second ago. It sent weird shivers all along your spine. Gave you goosebumps. Something told you he knew more than he let it on. What he knew, you hadn't the faintest idea. He just did. That might be why you were so anxious the moment you spotted their house. There was a strange, painful twist in your stomach every time you saw Sans. Papyrus was fine. He grew on you like moss on a tree. Made you feel comfortable, important, but Sans always left you on edge, despite his slow and casual attitude. It was as exciting, perplexing, and pretty damn scary. Some part of you almost enjoyed it. You were kind of freaky like that. Finally, thank God, Papyrus answered the door in all his skeletal glory. You let out a wheezing sigh, slumping your shoulders. So it really was the sauce. Though, by the way Papyrus looked at you, it might as well have been some horrible, life-altering tragedy. His apron was covered in red, glistening splotches. He was holding a wet, soapy sponge. He smiled at you, but he looked like he was about to cry at any moment. Papyrus, you started, but were quickly interrupted.
Human, hello? I am so sorry. You will have to wait an extra hour to eat your delicious spaghetti meal. I, the great Papyrus, have been thwarted yet again by the unseen forces that wish to destroy my tomato sauce. I hope you understand. Please, do not be upset.
He finished with a gentle yet awkward one-armed hug, and a sweeping gesture to invite you inside. You couldn't help but give him a grin, stepping inside the cozy little home and patting him on the back. He was so darn cute.
Don't worry about it, pal. I'm sure this next one will be even better than the last.
With that, Papyrus snapped his spine straight with a bony little clink, punching his fist into the air quite dramatically in a moment of triumph.
Yes, you're right. The great Papyrus never gives up in the face of adversity. This tomato sauce will certainly be, by far, the greatest tomato sauce you have ever tasted.
You stifled a snort as you followed him dutifully into the kitchen. You knew you'd have to eat it later, so it was really no time to be laughing. He's always very adamant about burning everything to enhance the flavor. You and Sans would be swallowing mouthfuls of black sludge later. Then, looking around the place, you realized something.
Hey, Pap, where's your brother?
He looked away from his ministrations over at the stove, wiping a trail of reddish, bubbly liquid with a paper towel. Gross. He shrugged his shoulders.
Sans has been up in his room all day. That lazy bones is probably still napping.
That was a bit strange. You knew that Sans loved to sleep, but it was getting dark out. Surely he couldn't be sleeping all day. Not on movie night, at least. He was usually the first one to call a spot on the couch. Maybe he just wasn't feeling good, or maybe it was something else.
Do you think he's all right?
You asked, carefully tiptoeing over the puddle of sauce on the floor. Papyrus didn't seem worried in the least, responding with a chipper little nod of the head while he wiped the floor.
Do not worry yourself, human. I made him promise not to be late.
He continued to clean, humming a little tune. He would probably be there for a while, so you figured you might as well go check anyway, just in case. Probably. Definitely not because you wanted to catch him doing something suspicious. Definitely not because you were sure he had some kind of super secret underground chamber filled with human hunting gadgets or torture devices or anything. You were just totally worried for his well-being. That's all right, right?
Well, I'm gonna go check just to make sure he's doing okay. Is that cool with you? Do you need help or something?
It was probably rude to just leave Papyrus there alone, cleaning in the kitchen. You were a guest in his home after all, but Papyrus, being the Papyrus that he is, refused your help and reassured you that he would clean the floor better than anyone else had ever cleaned a floor before. You allowed yourself to snort that time and gave him a little wave before making your way up the stairs. On the last step up, you felt your heart jump up to your throat. That was new, and more than a little alarming. Sans' bedroom door was open. Not wide enough to see inside from where you were standing, but it was definitely open, just a crack. You've been living in the underground long enough to know that Sans never leaves his door open. Not when he's home and not when he's gone, and it was dark in there. Not a single light shone in that mysterious cavern of a bedroom. You felt an involuntary shiver skitter up your back as you recalled how many horror movies have used this scene before. And you had always said aloud to everyone else's dismay in the movie theater it was obviously a trap of some sort, but for some godforsaken reason you were determined to take a peek inside. Time seemed to slow as you swallowed past the dryness in your throat. You didn't even realize you'd walked to the door until your hand was ghosting over the knob. You could hear your pulse pounding in your brain. You could feel your knees shake and your palms sweat. Before you could make any dangerous decisions, however, you heard a noise. A small, deep grunt, maybe 1 or 2 feet away from the door. You almost pissed yourself. You threw your hands over your mouth to keep from making any noise and very carefully leaned your face towards the crack. Please don't be murdering anyone. Please don't be conducting magic experiments on poor defenseless animals. Please don't be summoning a demon from hell. Please don't. Holy shit. Well, that was certainly a magical blue vagina if you ever did see one. That was certainly a skeleton attached to it. All the blood in your body, which seemed to have momentarily drained itself out, suddenly found its way to your face. You felt lightheaded and seconds away from completely passing out, but you couldn't bear to tear your eyes away from the sight in front of you. Sans, on his bed, leaning his back against the wall and letting out shaky little breaths. His legs were bent and casually spread out in front of him. There was a faint blue blush on his strained face, illuminated by a strange glow. His shirt rode halfway up his torso, exposing the pristine white skeletal structure beneath. It almost looked delicate, like something you'd see in a science lab. But you knew better. His chest rose and fell as though there were lungs hard at work beneath it, and in his eye sockets no light. Your breath hitched. You felt your body going cold and hot at the same time. He was still wearing his shorts, but at the crotch was again, holy shit. Thankfully, he didn't seem to notice your presence and continued without pause. He pressed 2 slick, bony digits between the strange blue lips and let out a breathy whine. Your stomach did flops. Heat pooled in your groin to hear his usual slow, even voice crack in such a way it was definitely something. If your body language indicated anything, lewd, wet noises filled the air as he began to quicken his pace. His eye sockets closed, his grin tight. Sweat somehow managed to build up along the top of his skull, and he bucked desperately against his own hand, letting the shorts slide down just for a bit below his hip bone. He brushed a finger gently against the clit with a hiss, and you could see the graceful bones of his hand getting wetter with each passing moment. It took all your willpower not to crumble into a sweaty heap on the floor. God, he was so beautiful. You didn't think you'd ever find it in you to call a skeleton beautiful, but what other word could you use? It was always funny and terrifying and exciting and mysterious and just... But you hadn't expected to feel like this at all. Not for him. It scared you how much pure lust and adoration you felt in that moment. You only met him a month ago. It was clearly unhealthy. Definitely. Most likely. Maybe. Yeah. Sans moaned softly into his other hand, probably trying to keep as quiet as possible with his brother still in the house, and added a 3rd finger. The noise he made next was a deep and guttural, and you gripped onto the doorframe to steady yourself. You needed to leave. This is wrong, spying on him like some kind of peeping Tom, but you could hardly feel your legs. Moving your feet would be impossible, and the last thing you wanted to do was alert him of your presence. He'd probably kick your ass right through the top of Mount Ebot out of sheer fury. He'd grab you by the collar, push you against the wall, and you shuddered. That sounded kind of hot, actually. Despite all rational thought, you really wanted to go in there and replace his hand with your mouth. You licked her lips. You needed a cold shower. And Jesus. Another series of quiet moans broke you out of your frankly embarrassing thoughts. He was close. Sans continued to pump his fingers in and out, the rhythm faltering into something erratic and sloppy. He brushed his clit again. Sweat poured down the sides of his face. He moved his other hand through his chest and ran it firmly along the bones of his spine. Damn. His whole body shook, a few bones rattling together as he rolled his hips like a goddamn porn star, and rode out his orgasm. Several very long seconds passed as you watched him. You couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He cautiously removed his fingers and opened his eyes halfway in a lazy stare. The lights were back on. They were pointed directly at you. Fuck. You became frozen in panic, thought you might have a heart attack. Then he put his 2 wet, sticky fingers in a peace sign, opened his black void of a mouth and ran a long, wet blue tongue in between them, licking up his own fluids. Then he flashed you the most shit-eating grin you've ever seen. Oh my God. Busted. Definitely not ready for whatever horrific and humiliating conversation might go on between you two, you found your legs and scrambled down the stairs like a jumping spider doused in vodka. Then you made your way straight to the kitchen, which was surprisingly clean as a whistle. "Hi, Papyrus, how's it going? Sorry I took so long. Did you make it this process?" You screamed every word in quick succession, while almost crashing face first into the sink. The floor was still wet. Papyrus, seeming both startled and concerned by your unusual outburst, looked up from a large pot filled with simmering tomato liquid.
Worry not, human. The sauce is almost complete. Did you talk to my brother yet?
You nearly choked on air, trying your best to casually lean against the sink and look like someone who totally did not just get caught watching Sansa jerk off in his bedroom.
Nope, he was busy. He didn't answer the door, but I needed to use the bathroom, which is why it took so long. Got a really nasty stomach ache from eating some leftover Chinese food last night. Yeah, it was bad. Papyrus scrunched his face up and shook his head in pity. You were glad he was such a gullible boy, because that shit wouldn't have flew by anyone else you knew.
Please remember to take care of your fragile human body. It's a good thing you have me to make you some of my world-famous spaghetti to soothe your aching stomach. I'll have you feeling better in a jiffy.
You thanked him with a shaky smile. Oh, Papyrus, if only you knew. As you watched him violently stir the pot, it dawned on you that you had no way out of this situation because eventually Sans had to come downstairs and sit on the same couch as you for several hours. If you canceled, you knew the problem wouldn't get resolved and you'd end up avoiding not only Sans, but Papyrus as well. How could you hurt his feelings like that? Plus, the underground wasn't as big as you initially thought. Even if you left snowed in, there was no guarantee you wouldn't run into the Bone Brothers again at some point. You decided that staying would probably go a lot smoother. That wouldn't make it any easier, though. Not by a long shot. Thank you for watching. Please check out my other videos. They're also things. This was surprisingly well written. I had basically no problem with how any of this was written except for a few small grammatical errors. Some good porn. Some great porn. Anyway, if you want to watch more shit like this, I don't know, I'll put up a random fucking smut fiction up in the top right-hand corner. If you want to watch a video that has nothing to do with my channel whatsoever, click in the bottom left-hand corner. If you want to buy shirts and shit, that's up in the top left-hand corner, and I also have a Patreon. That's the sellout button in the bottom right-hand corner. Hope you enjoyed this Undertale smut. Hope it got your goat. Got your Temmie. Oh, fucking Jesus Christ.